I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President. We stand firm in our commitment to return the hostages and defeat Hamas, and it's time for the international community to take our commitment seriously. We will bring home every lost hostage. Hamas has refused to release our hostages and repeatedly rejected all the offers, both by the US and the mediating countries, even for the period of Ramadan. And thus, the return to fighting is a necessity. The IDF is attacking targets of the Hamas terrorist organization to achieve our objectives. These precise attacks include Hamas terrorist commanders, terrorist cells, launch posts, weapon stockpiles, and additional military infrastructure that are being used by these terrorist organizations to continue to plan and execute attacks against Israeli civilians and IDF soldiers. However, we are drawn into a discussion today not to alleviate suffering, not to seek truth, but to indulge the political agenda of certain members of this Council. Those who wield humanitarian rhetoric and feigned concern as a weapon, turning a blind eye to the primary cause of suffering in Gaza, the Hamas terrorist organization, which continues to hold 59 innocent hostages. For those truly concerned about humanitarian crises, there is one that should be paramount. The hostages still held in Hamas's brutal captivity. Men, women, children, the elderly, innocents ripped from their homes and subjected to horrors beyond comprehension. Many are already believed to be dead, while others continue to be tormented day after day. For over a year and 4 months, they have been deprived of sunlight, medical care, the comfort of their family's embrace. Their conditions are unknown, their treatment unimaginable. This is the most urgent humanitarian crisis, and yet those who claim to be the loudest voices for human rights have somehow lost their voices on this matter. So let us be clear, any discussion of humanitarian suffering that does not begin with the hostage release is not an honest discussion. For months, Israel took unprecedented steps to facilitate humanitarian aid into Gaza. Israel's war is against Hamas, not Gaza's civilians. And yet, despite our efforts, Hamas refuses every opportunity for peace. It refuses to release the hostages. Over a 6-week period between January and February alone, Israel facilitated the entry of an unprecedented amount of humanitarian aid into Gaza, over 25,000 aid trucks, averaging more than 4,200 trucks per week. These trucks carried food, medical supplies, and essential goods. This is not speculation, not political rhetoric. This is in fact documented, verifiable, and confirmed by the organizations distributing and supplying the aid. In addition to the thousands of aid trucks, bakeries are operational across Gaza, producing millions of loaves of bread daily. In northern Gaza alone, increased fuel deliveries resulted in a 40% increase in bakery output. The slander that the people of Gaza are currently starving is quite simply untrue. Fuel and gas deliveries also continued over this period. Nearly 1,000 fuel tankers entered Gaza, including 275 to the north. Claims that the electricity cutoff has plunged Gaza into humanitarian collapse are greatly exaggerated, particularly regarding water infrastructure. Water pipes and sewage repair materials were sent to northern Gaza, ensuring that infrastructure remains functional. During the same 6-week period, over 840,000 tents were delivered. This was a massive logistical undertaking supported by international partners and facilitated by Israel. Madam President, let us be very clear. If there is suffering in Gaza, it is not because of a lack of aid. It is because Hamas has hijacked an entire civilian population for its own violent ends. Hamas diverts food, Hamas hoards fuel, Hamas transforms hospitals, schools, and UN facilities into command centers, ensuring that even in the presence of humanitarian aid, suffering persists. But somehow, in the debates of this Council, Hamas is an afterthought, a footnote, a mere inconvenience in the preferred narrative. And so, instead of asking why Hamas continues to prolong this war, instead of asking why Hamas rejected a ceasefire extension that would have freed civilians from suffering, instead of asking why Hamas holds hostages in horrific conditions, instead of asking these questions, certain members choose instead to malign Israel, the only party in this conflict undertaking their humanitarian obligations and taking steps to meet them. Israel will not be lectured by those who exploit human suffering for political gain. If this Council wishes to address suffering, then it must demand the immediate and unconditional release of the hostages. There can be no progress until this occurs. There can be no relenting against the evil that we face. The massive amounts of humanitarian aid which Israel coordinated and facilitated, at least those amounts not seized by Hamas, have reached every segment of Gaza's population, with one tragic exception: the hostages. While Gazan civilians benefit from food, medicine, shelter, and support, these innocent individuals languish in conditions that defy human comprehension, a stark reminder of the vast moral inequivalence between Israel and Hamas. The release of the hostages is the first, the most urgent, the most fundamental step towards ending this war. The people of Gaza deserve a future free from Hamas and the pain that they wrought. The innocent Israelis wasting away in Hamas's tunnel network must once again feel the sun on their faces and embrace their loved ones. This is the only true path to peace. I thank you, Madam President.